Good morning, everyone. My name is Renier Pinar. As you all know, I'm a technical consultant at Sage. I've been in this role for about 14 years now. We'll be reviewing the X3 MongoDB log file rotation during this webinar. As some of you may remember, previous webinars we've done a few years ago and in June, and we'd like to invite you to also follow all our future webinars. The MongoDB log file rotation was identified as a need by some of our Sage X3 customers in the field. This is also a standard function inside the MongoDB and is easily configurable normally in a Unix Linux environment. We'll quickly review what we'll be covering within this webinar. MongoDB log file rotation. In this section, we'll take a closer look at why we need to consider MongoDB log file rotation. And we'll have a look at some of the benefits of deploying the X3 script we've developed. The MongoDB log file rotation script. Here we'll review the mechanics of the various sections of the script, which basically includes 7 different stages. We'll then review the script within an actual VM. And our VM is basically running on patch 31. It's important to note that the script is compatible with all versions of Sage X3. Automating the rotation process. In this step, we'll review how we can use the Windows Task Scheduler to pass key arguments and set up the script to run without any human intervention. Then if time permits, we'll close with a brief Q&A session. And we'll answer any questions that you may have been asked during this, or we'll answer any questions that you guys may have had during this presentation. So let's get into it. MongoDB log file rotation. So why is it important that we use MongoDB log file rotation? A few key reasons why it's important to have X3 MongoDB log file rotation. Our script basically offers automated log file rotation, which is normally easily configurable within a Unix Linux environment. To make it easier, we've basically developed this alternative, which is basically a Windows-based script for Windows environments, and it's basically easily deployable. I'll also share with you guys a link a little bit later, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, about an alternative that you guys can use to the script. But I think you'll quickly realize that using the script is a good idea. So which versions of Sage X3 supports our script? And basically all our versions of Sage X3 supports this the script, and you'll be able to deploy it in any version of Sage X3, even older versions, although end of life for most of those older versions, like version 6, for example, and version 7 has been reached, and I think there's not one customer out in the field that's running on any of those. So our script makes the MongoDB log file rotation process completely dynamic by passing 3 key arguments, which is basically the log file directory path 1, the log file backup directory path, and the name of the MongoDB log file to the script. The configuration is dynamic and based on these 3 key arguments that we basically pass to it. The MongoDB log file naming may be different from MongoDB version to MongoDB version, but it may also be different where our Sage business partners choose to use a unique name for the MongoDB log file during the installation. So let's have a look at those 3 key arguments. The first one is just the log directory where the actual MongoDB log file is stored. That would be the first argument that we'll pass. The second one is the backup directory that we create and that we can create ourselves. and basically our log files will be placed into this directory, and there will be a 7-zip backup created for the log files in cases where it's quite big. Some of these log files, depending on the size of the customer, can grow to very big sizes. And the minute it does do that without log file rotation, you'll note performance degradation in the background. The third argument is the name of the MongoDB log file. And as mentioned, this name can be configured during installation, and it's important to make sure that we get that name right. If it's not right, the script will not work. So, and with anything, if you pass the wrong argument to any process, it will not use it correctly. So then we can automate this whole process using the Windows Task Scheduler, and we'll have a look at that. And then we can also implement our disaster recovery plan. For example, if we want daily backups of these log files, or weekly backups, or monthly backups of the log files, we can basically do that by basically automating it through the Windows Task Scheduler. Okay, there's 7 stages to our script. We'll go through the various stages a little bit later, and we'll briefly explain those stages. Then log rotate may also be implemented by using the below link. I'm going to share this link with you guys. You'll see it's here. I'll share this in actual fact in the blog. The blog is actually up and running, and I'd like to encourage you guys to please follow that, but a little bit more about that later during the presentation. The MongoDB log file rotation script explained, and here we're just going to have a look at the 7 stages of the MongoDB log file. So the first key stage is basically to stop all the MongoDB related services. The reason we have to do this is the MongoDB log file is basically protected by the MongoDB service. And while it's running, you cannot change or alter that file. So therefore, you have to basically stop the MongoDB service. And because MongoDB runs within the Syracuse environment, it's also important to make sure that we stop all the Syracuse related services at the same time. So then we basically create a MongoDB backup directory based on our arguments that we've passed. This is all done dynamically by the script, and like I said, it's completely automated. So and you guys will see the beauty of using it a little bit later as well. Okay, then we copy the current latest MongoDB log file into the backup directory that we've created above. And that's basically our third step. And the fourth step is basically we purge the old MongoDB log file that we no longer need. So we clear it from the system. And the fifth step is basically we create a 7-zip self-extracting executable. This is quite useful where we'd like to reference the file in the future, and we'd like to keep a backup of that so that we can do that. And in some cases, it'll be useful to do that. Sixth step is we basically delete all unnecessary files. So we don't want to be left with the bulk of the files, and hence the reason we use 7-zip is to make sure that we compress those files and make them as small as possible. And then the final step there would be to restart all the MongoDB related services. Okay, so at this point, we're going to be reviewing the actual mechanics of the script inside an actual virtual machine. I've got it running in the background. So I'm just going to end the slideshow here, and we'll come back to it. And I just want to jump to that section and make sure that we share this on the screen. In actual fact, I'm going to stop sharing and just reshare. Apologies for that. Okay, so basically, this is the key workings of our script, and we'll share it within the FTP server. So you guys will have a look at that a little bit later. We'll get back to it maybe a little bit later. You'll notice that on this particular VM, Bertrand and all these other scripts is basically located within a scripts directory. It's a good location to store the script. So I would suggest that you guys do it there. So I'm just going to copy this path to the script, and we'll execute it via the command line shortly. Just want to make sure I can reach the command line. There we go. Okay, so this particular VM has got two partitions, a D drive. We're going to execute the script from, so I just copied the path to the script where we're going to execute it. We are going to, I'm going to show you how to automate this completely without having to do this. This is just purely for demonstration purposes that we're doing this. So I'm going into that directory, and you'll see all the scripts is located here. So I'm going to execute that script, start executing it. So that's our script over there. And the first argument that we passed is basically the path of the MongoDB log file directory, which is basically this one. So I'm going to copy that path, and I'm going to paste it onto the command line. Make sure it ends with a /. And the second one is our backup directory, which I've created, and I've simply called it backup. So I'm just going to type it in there. And then the final parameter or argument that we pass is basically the name of our MongoDB log file, which you guys can see. I'll show you what it is. It's mongodb.log. Now, this name can change at installation. For example, you can call it mongo.log as opposed to mongodb.log. That's why it's important to use the exact name. So in this case, it's called mongodb.log. So that's the name of the file. And I'm going to execute and run the script. And there we go. It starts. Nice little intro. And yeah, basically we get to the first point, and this is to stop our services. So it goes in and basically stops all the related services. I've entered a pause here just to stop it manually. So we're just going to go to the next one. And the next step is basically creating a MongoDB log file directory, which basically uses the arguments that we set up, these two key arguments, to basically configure that. And it uses today's date. It automatically picks up the system date. So you can easily reference the log files. And if you ever have to restore them, you can restore it by date. So it will nicely catalog all our log files backups for us. And then basically it copies the log file, the existing log file, into the directory that we've created. And then over here, it purges the old log file. So it's a pity I didn't show you, but you'll see that the log file is going to be 0 kilobytes big after this. That will be created after we start all the services. This step, we basically create the 7-zip self-extracting executable. And it will basically finish with everything is okay. Then we know we're good to go. And the final step, or second final step, is basically just to clean up the unwanted files. So the backup directory we no longer need, as we've got the self-extracting executable in our backup directory, which I'll show to you in a second. So here we start all the services again, all the MongoDB services. And that's basically the end of the script, and that's how it'll operate. So then I just want to show you the backup directory where that file was now created. We go into that directory. This is just one that I ran previously, but you can see this particular one that we ran today. There it is. So if I want to, for whatever reason, extract that, I can simply click on that self-extracting executable. It will extract and place it into this file, and there's the old file restored. So for whatever reason, if I want to reference the logs that was created previously, now this is a very small size, but if for whatever reason you need to debug something that's trapped within the log files, you can refer back to them by reusing the log files that you then keep within this directory. And you'll note that generally 7-zip has got a 40:1 compression ratio, so it's very, very good, and it generally works very, very well. Okay, so I'm going to go back to our presentation at this stage and minimize that. And I'm going to stop sharing and then reshare after we go back to the same point of our presentation. So let's go back into our presentation. Basically, as far as the presentation goes, the second thing that I want to show you guys is basically automation through the Windows Task Scheduler. So I think in actual fact, I'm going to reshare the screen and just dive into that. So you'll see that slide coming up just before we get to our Q&A session. And for now, I'm just going to jump back into our VM and basically show you guys how we can automate this. So inside the Windows Task Scheduler, we can basically specify specific dates that we want to use. And yeah, I'm just going to type in task. It should come up with a Windows Task Scheduler. Windows Task Scheduler is generally one of the admin tools that's used under administration. Under your control panel, you can generally find this. I just search for it, and you can obviously jump to it like that as well. And I'm just going to open it and set up a task for you. Then very important, I'm going to show you guys how to set up the 3 key arguments. So it's basically the whole process is basically automated. So under Task Scheduler, and we'll basically set up a task. We'll go to Action, and we'll say we want to create a task. It's going to be a Microsoft task, and we'll call it MongoDB log file rotation. I'm just going to use that as a description as well. And we'd like to run this whether the user is logged in or not, and we do not store. We don't want to store any passwords, but we can. And this is generally just going to be an administrative type person that will be setting this up. So normal users won't set this up. So we set this up for our customers. And here we'll say we want to trigger a new trigger, and we want to base it based on time. For example, let's set it up to run once a week. So I would say I want this to run once a week over weekends. Let's say on a Sunday when the system's not too busy. I want to run this at 10 o'clock at night or whatever. We can then specify that. And we can say, let's run at 10 o'clock at night. And we'll make it exactly 10 o'clock at night. And that's going to be the timing for or the trigger for our script. And under actions, we want to specify that we want to execute that particular script. So we'll select this one, start a program, and we'll select our script there from the scripts directory, and we'd say open. And now this is the section that I wanted to show you. is here we're going to specify the 3 key arguments that we would have normally manually typed in to run the script. So in this case, we're going to choose the log file directory, which is basically logs. So let's just copy that. So that's going to be the first parameter or argument. And basically what we do is how we segregate these arguments is with a space. So make sure that you put a space character there. So then the second argument is going to be entered there. This is going to be followed by a backup. So we'll have a backup at the end. And the final one, make sure you enter a space, is the name of our MongoDB log file. So we call it mongodb.log. And that's it. That's basically all the arguments that we pass. Now, basically once a day, or once a week in this case, at 10 o'clock in the evening on Sundays, it's going to run and our script will be automated. Because we're setting this up as administrative, with administrative privileges, it'll run at the highest level. And this is also how I would suggest you set up the script to basically run as with administrator privileges. So I'm just going to specify that password. Complicated password. And there we go. So our task has been scheduled. I've tested this and it runs perfectly. And if any of you need to see that in action, I can arrange a session. And we don't need that log file, so we can just delete it. And at this stage, we'll get back to our presentation. And I think that's all I wanted to show you guys from the VM's point of view. Let's get back to the presentation. And let me share the screen. Okay, so we had a look at the mechanics of the script inside a VM. And then we also had a look at how we can automate the script using Windows Task Scheduler. Okay, then automating the process via the Windows Task Scheduler is obviously a very good idea. You can also link it to your disaster recovery time schedule that you've decided on, or the customer has decided on. Say they want to keep daily backups of that log file. You can configure the Windows Task Scheduler to do that. You can also configure it to, over and above daily backups, you can keep monthly backups. For example, you could keep daily backups for the past week. Thereafter, you can purge the log files, and you can keep monthly backups of the log file for entire year. So it all depends on the disaster recovery time schedule that's been decided on by the particular customer, and that will basically determine how you will set up and configure the Windows Task Scheduler. So basically, guys, thank you very much for your time. All effort should always be taken to ensure that MongoDB runs at optimum performance and basically ensures the best possible performance for Sage, this Sage X3 environment overall. And therefore, it's a very good idea to run a utility like this. Even if you use the log rotate function within MongoDB, it's a good idea to basically rotate your log files. I have shared a link on a blog that I've got posted. And I would like to basically just share this blog with you guys. And on the blog, I would please like to ask you guys to please share, and like and share and follow the blog. And I'm basically just going to paste that into the chat right now. So I would like you guys to please make sure that you basically follow this. And I'm just going to end the presentation. And there we go. And I'm basically just gonna share this blog with you guys. I'm pasting it in the chat for you. There's the blog, and you guys are welcome to join that. I'll also share with you on the blog the documentation and the location, and you guys are welcome to basically download that script from our server. Next month, we're going to be running another webinar, and I'd like to encourage you all to basically join that as well. Hopefully, it'll also be interesting, and you guys will like that as well. Andrea, I think we can basically close with a quick Q&A session, if time permits, and if people would like to stay on for another 5 minutes, they're welcome to do so.
Thanks, Rennie. Okay, I see there were not that many questions in the chat. One question was answered already. Okay, so feel free to post any questions in the chat. And then also, we would also encourage you to take a few moments of your time to answer the survey that we posted as well in the chat, so that we can get a feel of the topics that you are interested in, and also get some feedback of our presentation, so that we can improve on them and also prepare content that is relevant to your needs. See, I see there's not many questions coming through, or there are no questions in the chat. So Renee, you can, okay, are you gonna close, or we can just do the final word?
Now we can close. Thank you,
Okay.
guys. If you don't have any questions, you're more than welcome to post them on the blog. And we've shared the link with the blog with you. So I would encourage you guys to all please go and follow that blog. And if you want a copy of the script, I'll pass it on to you.
Okay. The next topic that we're going to cover, in fact, there will be another topic, another webinar this month, end of the month, to be precise. We are just going to take a review of the features that have been released in the updates that have come through, some of the things that you may have missed or you have already worked on. So things to look forward to is project imports, cashbook, improvements on cashbooks, improvements on the VAT 201 reports. So we are going to cover all the things that have been released this year that you may be aware of or you may not be aware of. So we'll be covering those topics, and also just sharing some of the insights on those features, and also some tips and tricks as well. So watch out this space, as they say. End of the month. Can give you a tentative date now. We will actually be back on the 26th of October for that webinar. So watch out this space for that presentation. So it just leaves us to thank you all for coming, for joining us. And also thanks to Renier for leading the discussion on the webinar enablement, and was looking specifically on the MongoDB log file rotation. Thank you and have a good day. And hopefully we'll see you again in future presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Cheers and bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, cheers. Thank you very much.